This area has changed a lot since 1934, but then it was the scene of a murder that remained unsolved for 10 years, with investigations leading to 87 countries and costing over £65,000. Linda Agostini had arrived in Sydney in 1927, with her future Italian husband Antonio Agostini arriving the same year. The couple met the following year and married in 1930. In 1933, they moved to Melbourne. Antonio later said it was to remove Linda from her party-eager friends and to stop her drinking. In June 1934, the couple moved to 589 Swanston Street, Carlton. Their home would be Linda's murder site. On the morning of the 27th of August 1934, Antonio testified that he woke to Linda pointing a gun in his face. During the ensuing struggle, the gun discharged and fatally wounded Linda. But instead of calling police, Antonio threw the weapon off the Anderson Street Bridge and returned to the flat where he wrapped the body in a blanket and put it in the boot of his car. He then headed towards Sydney. Just before Albury, he headed down the How Long Road and placed Linda's body in a culvert, doused it in kerosene and set it alight. However, the rain had other ideas than hiding his crime. The body was discovered a few hours later by a farmer moving stock. It was decided to embalm the unknown victim to allow time for identification. A death mask was also made and displayed in an attempt to discover her identity. The embalmed body was placed in a lead-lined coffin and was available to thousands of people who walked past her, yet none could identify her. World War II began and the Pyjama Girl, as she was now known, was stored in the basement of Sydney University. In 1944, it was decided to put fresh eyes on the Pyjama Girl, and she was freshened up for another attempt at identification. In just a few days, she was identified as Linda Agostini. At the same time, Antonio, fresh out of an internment camp, had returned to his old job at Romano's in Sydney, where one of his regulars was New South Wales Police Commissioner William Mackay. Antonio confessed to Mackay, which set in motion the police forces of two states, New South Wales and Victoria. Agostini voluntarily accompanied police to Victoria, along with the embalmed body of his wife, stopping at the How Long Road, explaining to detectives from both sides of the border what he did a decade before. On arrival in Melbourne, he was formally charged. Linda's body was now held under an armed guard in the Melbourne morgue, before a 19-day coronial inquest, the longest one up until that time. Antonio was formally charged with murder, but was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years hard labour jail in June 1944. He served 4 years at Pentridge before being deported back to Italy in 1948. He remarried and died in 1969. Linda was buried in a grave at the Preston Cemetery, paid for by the state. The mourners were those who never knew Linda in life. Members of the press who had reported on the case for the previous decade acted as pallbearers, carrying Linda to her final resting place.